Is Neda Almeida. Many of you know me. I manage the pre-construction department at Royal LePage, your community, and Royal LePage Connect. So I have been in I've been in real estate since 2005. And when I started working in when I got my license, the company that I registered with, the owner of the brokerage actually was a builder. And so I got my very first hands-on experience working at his sales offices, both in terms of doing assignments and flipping of these new pre-construction units, as well as selling from the sales office brand new products. So I've been on both ends of the spectrum, representing buyers as well as representing the builder. At the same time, in the capacity that I am now, we work with a lot of developers, pricing projects, and coming up with price lists and strategies on marketing and whatnot. So just to give you a little background as to where I come from, where my experiences stem from. The course that we're going to talk about today is a really basic introduction into the world of pre-construction. What I do in the department and the services that we bring to you at the pre-construction department, and how you can utilize the information that's provided to build your business and get pre-construction deals going. Because as we all know, I mean, the market has a lot of ups and downs, the resale market, it's always been, but pre-construction has been relatively steady all throughout my real estate career. I mean, it's got its hot days and it's got its cooler days, but it's always been a very easy way for people to get into the world of pre-construction. And I'll talk about why it's a lot more attractive to a lot of buyers, and we'll get into that. So how many of you are receiving my pre-construction e-blasts? Okay, awesome. The ones who are not getting them, are you aware that they're coming?
No.
Okay. In many cases, the pre-construction emails are going into your spam box. If you're receiving your haves and wants emails and the notifications from the office, you will be receiving this because we use the same database for the pre-construction, and the sender will be pre-construction. I can actually log into my Gmail account and show you. Keep in mind, if you're, come on in. Yeah, come on in. There's a room here. So if you're using your Royal LePage email, you have to log into the Royal LePage website and go to the spam box of that Royal LePage inbox as opposed to where it's being forwarded to. So just keep that in mind. And these basically these pre-construction emails, the e-blast rather, come you know, sometimes once a week, sometimes a few times a week. So and it's the way that I communicate any upcoming launches or any basically updating information with regards to the pre-construction site or projects rather. Okay, so just please remember to log into your mail accounts and receive and mark the emails as saved, because that's the only way I can communicate with you, and then you don't know what's happening with there I am. Okay, so there was one sent out actually yesterday. Sorry, this laptop is not very user-friendly. Okay, so pre-con emails, and there they are. So the one that I sent yesterday, this is what it looks like. So this is what it's going to look like, and this one I made it colorful for you guys. But generally speaking, this is the type of information you'll be looking at. It's going to say the name of the project, the area where it's located at, and what sort of event is happening. So with this one, it's saying it's coming soon. If it was a platinum launch, it would say platinum access or platinum launch, and it will indicate a date as to when the launch will be. And then I will give you instruction. I will sometimes give you a brief description of the building or the pre-construction sort of a townhouse site or whatever the site is. I'll tell you how many stories potentially, what the starting price is. If I have information about commission, I'll share the commission with you. So if I go to the next one, I think we have that information. So Universal City, for example, in Pickering, Platinum Access, 4% commission, 20% deposit starting from, and I will explain basically in the body what to do next. So in this case, worksheets are being accepted on a first come basis, email your information to, and so the reason why I ask, and many times the actual instructions on the, that the builder provides will have an email address for their site. The reason I try to liaison between you and the pre-construction site is to basically make sure that your worksheets are not being ignored. Because if they don't recognize your name, a lot of times they will set them aside and not look at it right away. But if I'm sending it on behalf of Royal LePage, your community, and you're entitled to your full commission, unless otherwise I explain in the body of the email or tell you verbally, whatever the builder's providing will be passed on to you if you're going through the pre-construction department and through myself and as part of the Vivian Risi, you know, your community or Connect team. You are entitled to your full commission. If you ever, and I'll talk about when there's an opportunity to go through an outside brokerage or another agent through our own offices, they might choose to keep back a percentage of the commission. So just recognize the difference between the two access points. And then you can click on these links that I provide for you. And this will bring you into my Google Drive link where the brochure, the floor plans, the price list, everything's organized in a nice, neat folder, basically layout. And once you click on any of them, you can right click on that and download. And that will allow you to save it on your Drive, wherever you choose to save it, and then email it to your client. So just remember, never forward these e-blasts that I send out to you directly to your clients, because number one, you don't want them to have access to the information on the commissions and any sort of details that are for your eyes only. Certain things we just don't want to share with our buyers. They don't need to know everything. They don't need to see all the floor plans. They don't need to see all the price list. They should only see what you choose to share with them. So download the information and email it to them from your own email inbox, as opposed to forwarding that e-blast to them. And keep in mind, if they get all the information from you, they could easily take that information and work with someone else. That doesn't necessarily guarantee you your commission, and we want to make sure that you get what is rightfully yours. So in the event this is what I wanted to talk to you about. So when you look at these e-blasts, in most cases, I provide two different links for you to access our pre-construction website through. In the event you cannot remember how to log in, if you scroll to the bottom, there is a section that says, please click here for instructions how to access. And once you click on any of those, that's a PDF file that opens up, and it has a step-by-step basically procedure as to how to log into the pre-construction website. And I have one for YCR and one for Connect. And your login point of access is obviously different as well. So once you click here, this is the same thing. It will bring you to the page where you used to be basically your point of access to the MCS login page. For Royal LePage, your community, you're going to access the MCS login right up here underneath the social media icons. Once you click there, it will bring you to the MCS login page. For Royal LePage Connect, your access point will be at the bottom of the page where the MCS login is. So just all the way, if we can scroll down, all the way down here where the, do you guys see it?
Bottom left, right?
Bottom left.
Bottom left. Oh, there, yes. So MCS login. You're going to click there, and you're going to use your credentials to log in. So let's log in together. Log me out here. Okay, so we're gonna log in. So client code will always be filled in automatically. You can skip that. Your user ID will be your last name, comma, space, first name, all lowercase. And your password, in 99.9% of situations, is your TREB login number. If for whatever reason that didn't work, if for whatever reason you put in your MLS number and it doesn't work, all you have to do is, oh, I shouldn't have logged in. There is a button right on that login page that says forgot password. Click on forgot password. It's going to ask for your email address, and that's the email address that you use to register your license with the company with. So just type in your email address, and it's going to ask for your name. You're going to click send or request, whatever the button is, and almost immediately they're going to email you back to your inbox your password to log in the event it's not your TREB. Once you get to this MCS admin page, you're going to go to the Royal LePage Your Community or Royal LePage Connect intranet. You're going to click there, and it will bring you to this beautiful, colorful page with all these large buttons on it. So these buttons will bring you into the Works, which is the basically that package that marketing provides for your listings, the anti-spam legislation, marketing, the academy, as well as the pre-construction. Once you come into the pre-construction page, always the very first row of properties at the very top are our in-house projects. So we are the selling company for these builders, and we're basically in-house. So if you go to the go-to sales office, for example, the agents that sit on site are Royal LePage realtors, and they're registered with us. Once you scroll down, then all the other properties or projects have been divided into Toronto. I have York region and other, just because at this point I don't have a whole lot of other, but eventually we'll get Peel and so on and so forth, so that you know what area you're looking for, your client's interested. All you have to do is basically click on that thumbnail, and again it will bring you into my Google Drive link where you have access to the worksheet and the renderings and the price list and whatnot. Everyone's familiar with this, more or less? Any questions? Okay, awesome. Let's go back to the basics then. Let's go back to this pamphlet. Oh, she didn't upload the PowerPoint. Sorry, guys. Bear with me 1 second. Okay. Okay, so we're gonna have to do it this way, unfortunately. Okay. Is this? Yeah, okay. All right. So, pre-construction. Yes, sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm just reading on the prior slide, the platinum access.
Yes, I'll talk about all that. I'll talk about it. What is pre-construction? So pre-construction is when you purchase, everything okay? Did you have questions?
No, just the light was.
The lighting? I don't know how to do the lighting.
Actually, not much back there.
Oh, there, yeah, it's working.
Oh,
There you
thank
go.
you so much.
Thank you, Martha. Okay, so any kind of property, it goes back up. Any kind of property that is not built and your clients are purchasing directly from the builder from usually a floor plan. It hasn't been built, it's not ready to move in yet for another few years, and that's basically pre-construction. Pre-construction can be freehold or condo. Freehold is usually in 99.9% of the cases, if it's completely freehold detached properties, a lot of times these builders do not cooperate with realtors just because these properties tend to sell very easily and they don't necessarily want to pay a commission to an agent to sell the product for them. Now I'm seeing more and more that where these builders that are building these detached freehold properties are reaching out to us, the realtors, and asking for our assistance just because the market, you know, is shifting slightly. So just be careful when you're approaching your project. Make sure that they do cooperate with realtors and that you are going to earn commission. Freehold, there's also a townhouse freehold that when you go into the sales office, they'll tell you, oh, we're a freehold townhouse. Keep in mind, in most cases, these townhouse projects will have a shared road element. So it's going to be a freehold with a condo element attached to it. And that's a PODL in the world of resale, where the road that they built is not a city road, and the builder had to build the road to basically service these townhouses. That road is a condominium road, and there's a maintenance fee, monthly maintenance fee on it. They have to keep a reserve fund for it, just like a condo project. And there's usually a minimal monthly payment of 100, 150. I've seen 200 as well, depending on how large the road is. And that the maintenance of that road will include snow shoveling, garbage removal, maintenance of the grounds, the common grounds basically, and the reserve fund. So freehold townhouse with condo elements. Condo apartments are obviously condo apartments, and that's where we basically want to get in, because that's where a majority of our buyers want to get into, the condo apartment pre-construction projects, and I'll go into why. So what you will basically face when you go into a sales office, or if a project hasn't been launched and the sales office is not open and I share the information with you, what you will see are things like the floor plan, things like features and finishes. They usually put it in a Schedule B. It's called a Schedule B, but that basically outlines all the features and finishes of the unit. Things from the color of the wall, the types of appliances that go in the property, the type of flooring you're going to get. In some cases, they'll even give you the width of the laminate or hardwood flooring, what type of countertops you'll get, and so on and so forth. You'll also get rendering. So when I send you these e-blasts and I say you can access the renderings are basically the artist's impression of what the building will look like, what the amenities will look like, what the site plan is, and everything to do with the building. And that's a very useful basically resource where you can utilize it to advertise this project via flyer on your website, on social media, and so on and so forth. I also will provide logos for you of the project and of the builder, not always of the builder, but always of the project. Each building, each project has its own logo, its marketing name, and whatnot. So we'll also have information on amenities. Amenities could be the gym, as well as, you know, if there's a guest suite, if there's 24 hours concierge and whatnot, and maintenance fees. So if there's a condo element attached to this pre-construction property, you'll get information about the maintenance fee, how much it's estimated to be. With majority of the properties, they will give you an estimate per square foot. So we'll say 47 cents a square foot. Keep in mind, nowadays, all the builders are basically, to keep that maintenance fee low, they will take out the utilities that used to be all included. Back in the days, you used to have, you know, even cable TV included in your maintenance fees. But nowadays, water's separate, separately billed, your electricity is going to be separately billed, sometimes even your energy bill, if there's a gas bill or heating or whatever that source is, some builders separate that as well. So just make sure you understand what the maintenance fee will include and what it does not include. In almost all cases nowadays with condominium properties, they will not include the maintenance of the parking and locker in the maintenance fee, and that will be listed separately for you in most cases. This is something you want to confirm with the site agents and the site staff if you do have a buyer. So maintenance fee for the locker and parking, just they separate it because not every project will have basically the parking and locker included in the price, and one person might choose not to purchase a parking space, for example, so that they don't want to pay maintenance fee on it. And maintenance fees for lockers could be about $17, $18, $20, $30 a month. Parking maintenance ranges from about 50, 60 to about 100. I think I've seen 100 somewhere, depending on what area the building is at and what the builder is wanting to charge for it. So down payment and deposit. Down payment and deposit, the deposit that your client will pay to the developer is referred to as the down payment, or the deposit basically. Down payments that your client has to show to the bank could be more than what what your buyer is giving to the builder, but that they don't have to submit that to the builder until your final closing time when their mortgage is kicking in. They show their down payment to the bank. The deposit is what they're paying to the developer, basically in installments, and I'll talk about what that will look like. So the incentives. Incentives refer to the packages that basically the builders, in order to make this building look or this project look attractive to a lot of buyers, they bundle an incentive package, and that incentive package could be parking and locker included in the price, or it could be assignment fee is free of charge, or they're going to cap the development and levies. Development and levies basically refers to a portion of the closing costs on final closing. And some builders, as an incentive, offer a cap on it. So they will say, on 1-bedroom units, we will cap the development and levies at, let's just say, $2,500. That means on final closing, that portion of the closing cost will not surpass $2,500. It might be less, in most cases it's not, but it will be basically at $2,500. So those are basically what, are you looking for C? Yes, go ahead. Let me give you one of our pamphlets. There you go.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so that's what the incentives refer to. So in every basically occasion where your client is purchasing a pre-construction deal from a builder that is a condominium project or is freehold with a condominium aspect to it, just like those townhouses we talked about, they are entitled to 10 days cooling off period. That 10-day rescission period, if the builder tells you otherwise, you have to know that that's not legally accurate. Some builders with townhouses, they say, oh, it's a freehold with a pothole and whatnot, so only 3 days. That's not technically legal. But when the market was really hot, builders could get away with that. And because buyers wanted to get in really badly, they wouldn't question it. And they would hustle to basically make sure everything's according to, to their liking in 3 days time. But if there's a condo element, you get 10 days cooling off period. Within that 10 days cooling off period, that's the period where you want to bring this agreement to a lawyer, make sure the lawyer is well versed in the world of pre-construction. Just because they're a real estate lawyer does not mean they know how to handle a pre-construction deal and how to decipher this agreement of purchase and sale. These agreement of purchase and sales that are drawn by the developers are usually about 40-50 pages long, and there's a lot of legal terminology involved. I wouldn't decipher it and sit and read through it. It's good to be familiar with it, but don't try to explain it for your buyers. They're paying a lawyer for this, and make sure the lawyer takes care of it. Choose the lawyer carefully, because there are lawyers that will tear that deal apart and ruin that deal for you, just like in resale. Make sure that the lawyer you choose is thorough enough, but basically pro-deal as opposed to against deals, and they will basically scare your buyers out of their deal. So that 10-day cooling off period, under certain circumstances, if it's not at the beginning of the project, if the project has already launched and you go into the sales office and your buyer wants to, purchase after the whole launch thing and that whole basically craziness has kind of died down, you might, if your client needs more than 10 days to basically review, or their lawyer is away, or they're for whatever reason, their financing hasn't come through and whatnot, you are able to get an extension for that 10-day cooling off period. And that usually has to be either requested in writing by yourself or by the buyer or by their lawyer. They ask for an extension. Some builders are a little bit more generous with how many extra days they give you. Some builders will give you only a day or two of an extension. Within that 10-day cooling off period, almost all of the builders are now looking for mortgage pre-approval also. And this mortgage pre-approval is not a generic pre-approval, just pre-qualifying your buyers for, you know, you're qualified for $500,000. It's a specific pre-approval catering to this specific unit or property that they're buying. So it has to, majority of the developers are now looking for pre-approval from the 5 major banks. It has to be on an official bank letterhead. It has to have the name of the purchaser as it appears on the agreement of purchase and sale. It has to say the amount that they're approved for, and that amount has to be equivalent to, basically, if they're paying 20% deposit, that amount that they're pre-qualified for has to be 80%. If they're only putting, if they're putting 25% down with the developer, 75%, and so on and so forth. So if your client is only choosing to take out a mortgage equivalent to 50% of the value and is going to pay down the remainder, if they gave 20% to the developer, they want to take a 50% mortgage, there's another 30% there that they want to put basically money down towards on final closing. That letter has to explain where that difference is coming from. So don't get a mortgage pre-approval for 50% and say, well, they only want a 50% mortgage. That developer will not accept that. They want to know where that extra funding is coming from the sale of their property, from savings, or whatever the case might be. That letter has to explain it. And it has to be signed. And they, in most cases, want an original. Unless they receive your lawyer's information, all the post-dated checks from your buyer, as well as the mortgage pre-approval letters, they will not give you your co-op agreement to sign. They almost hold it collateral to make sure they get all the stuff that they need, and then they will, once the cooling off period is done, that's when they will give you your co-op agreement to sign, and that's your commission agreement basically with the developer. Make sure when you're getting your co-op agreement, you also ask for a copy of the first page of the APS that your client has signed. On that first page, you will see the purchase price of the property, you will see the schedule of deposits on that first page of the APS, as well as all the information of your buyer, their name, email address, and phone number. In the event you do not have that, or you lose it, or whatever the case is, that information is there. And you will actually need that first page of the APS along with your co-op agreement to submit with your deal checklist to the office. So once the deal is firm and that 10-day cooling off period is done, what do? That's when basically your role as the realtor is pretty much done. All you have to make sure of is that your co-op has been signed and that your paperwork is complete, your client has submitted their deposit checks, and that they make sure that these checks do not go NSF and do not bounce. Because if they do, there's usually a lot of fines that they have to pay to the developer. And you know, down the road, usually about a year or so before the actual move-in date, the developer will get in touch with your buyer and arrange for them to go in to choose their colors, to choose their color selection. It's called color selection appointment. That's when they choose the color of the laminate or hardwood flooring, color of the cabinets, the type of countertops, the type of cabinetry, and if there's any changes. Some developers will allow structural changes. I want to remove this wall, I want to add a closet here and whatnot. There's usually a cost involved with that. You want to take care of that as early on as possible, just because if that's if there's piping that needs to be moved, if there's electricals that need to be moved, you want to do that prior to the slab of the floor being poured. There's going to be fees involved, and the sales office will communicate. You go to the sales office for that. The sales office will communicate any fees involved and the procedure as to how to do structural changes. But upgrades and whatnot will happen at color selection, and your client will, in most cases, have to pay cash for those upgrades. They pay on the spot. They do not get added to your final price to be worked into the mortgage. So just keep that in mind, unless the developer is giving them some sort of a credit towards towards upgrades at the decor center, then they can utilize that. Otherwise, they'll have to pay for it cash. Interim occupancy. Okay, so interim occupancy is basically when your client gets their keys to move into the property, but it's not when they become the owner yet, in most cases. Sometimes occupancy and final closing fall on the same date, but that's quite rare. Interim occupancy is when the property's ready to move, the actual apartment or the unit is ready to move in, but if it's an apartment building, only the floor of your client's unit might be ready. The floor above might not necessarily be ready. It's still under construction. They're still finishing the unit from the inside. The amenities in most cases are not ready. It's only the only requirements to get occupancy and for Tarion to allow occupancy of a building is a functioning elevator, a potentially somewhat of a lobby-looking space. It doesn't have to be complete. And your unit, you have to have running water and a flushing toilet and a door that locks, and that's basically considered a unit that's ready for occupancy. I've seen horror cases where a developer, basically this was a freehold detached properties. You'll see this very rarely in condo apartments or condo townhouses, but with developers that do freehold detached properties, they give you a house that's not livable really, and they expect you to take occupancies. So that's why you want to choose a builder that's a reputable builder and has a good reputation. And in most cases, if you Google the name of this developer, you'll see all sorts of reports on them. So that's a simple tool as to basically learning about a certain developer. But basically, going back to the condo apartment, in a best case scenario, your client's unit is ready. They get the key. They submit 12 post-dated checks and that is equivalent to what potentially the mortgage would have been, and that's called. So occupancy fees are usually referred to as a phantom mortgage because they're roughly the same amount as the mortgage, because you're basically paying the interest to the developer, you're renting from the developer, you're paying the occupancy fee to the developer, as well as the insurance, a small amount of insurance you're paying to the developer. Because, yes?
Sorry, I was going to say, if the person is going to buy the unit cash,
yes,
do they have to pay any of these?
So some developers will allow a client to forego occupancy fees if the client is paying cash for the unit, but that there are certain circumstances you have to get the lawyer to request it in writing and find out what the circumstances will be, and if the developer will allow that. They stand to earn a lot of money during the occupancy period, so a lot of developers don't want to give that up. So they might just straight out say, no, you cannot pay cash. You have to wait basically until final closing. But some developers I've seen, they will agree to allow your buyer to pay cash at occupancy though. So they will pay out the property fully at occupancy to avoid, even though they're not owner yet. So I mean, there's circumstances around it, and you have to discuss that with the lawyer and with your client and find out if that is actually to their benefit or not. So some developers will allow that. So your client gets the key to move into the property. They will do a walkthrough with them. It's called, what is it called? PDI. Thank you, yes. It's called a PDI, where a pre-delivery inspection. They do a walkthrough of the property. If there's any deficiencies, usually the builder hires a third party that is a representative of Tarion, and they try to be as neutral as possible. And they will mark any sort of deficiencies on a form, and they will get your buyer to sign it. You can choose to be involved in both the color selection and the PDI, depending on how much of a basically relationship you want to build with your buyer. Personally, I like to attend the color selection, especially with my buyer, because if they choose these really ugly colors and I have to be responsible in renting or selling the property down the road, I want to have a say in what the colors should be. And you want to make sure that they choose sort of, and the decor staff are usually really good. They will advise your clients accordingly. Some of these builders nowadays actually allocate a package. They will say you can choose from package A, B, or C. and that these are your choices, and they will choose them very carefully, where package A is a more lighter neutral colors and all the colors kind of work together, and package B is the darker, and package C is the more sort of classic brown colors and neutrals and whatnot. So the site will have it, the staff at the color selection site will help, but maybe that's something that you want to attend as well, and build that relationship and rapport with your client. So right, occupancy. So your client gets the key to move in. Now, if the property is an investment property and your client chooses to rent during occupancy period, you would have basically crossed this situation at the time of the lawyer review, where the agreement of purchase and sale will say your client is not allowed to rent during occupancy period. And then your investor client is going to freak out and say, well, if I can't rent it, I don't want to carry, because occupancy period could be anywhere from 3 months to about a year, sometimes even more. I've seen 2 years. And they're paying out of pocket, and it's not even going towards their purchase price. It's a lot of money. And if I can't rent it, then I can't afford this property as an investment property. In 99.999% of the situations, the developer will look the other way if your client rents the property. All they ask for, in most cases, is for your client not to list it on MLS. So as long as you don't list it on MLS and sort of rent it through Kijiji or Craigslist or Interoffice or whatever the case might be privately, then that's fine, because they cannot possibly control 90% of the building being rented out, and they will cooperate. But as long as they don't officially know about it, then it's fine. So you want to give your client that assurance. Some developers will watch it very closely, and this, you can talk to me if I have Pemberton, for example. We work very closely with Pemberton. Go-To Condominium is a Pemberton project. Pemberton, in all of their agreements, it says no renting during occupancy period. But every building they've built so far, people have rented during occupancy period. So then, that's an assurance that you can give your client. The reason why the developer will put that in the agreement is because they don't want to be responsible for tenants' insurance situations, and it will actually affect their insurance on the property as well. So they officially will say, well, we didn't know that there's a tenant in there and we weren't aware, and whatever the case might be. So you can rent during occupancy period. Your client will move in and the building's not ready. Sometimes the amenities will take a full year after occupancy, after your client's moved in, before it's ready. So the gym, that pool, whatever the amenities are not ready for a year, 6 months, sometimes more than a year before, once they've moved in. So I had a situation where my client bought pre-construction. He closed on the property, or took occupancy of the property, rented it out. We had a fantastic tenant. Tenant was happy. They were moving into a brand new apartment building, and the amenities were not ready. We're not ready. We're like, okay, it usually takes a little while. 6 months go by, amenities are not ready. 9 months go by, amenities are not ready. A year goes by, and the buyer lost it basically and asked for compensation. So we had to come to some sort of an agreement as to, okay, so you paid this much per month, and why don't I give you a compensation of $100 a month and whatever, and just to keep the tenants happy. But in most cases, you want to educate your buyer and your tenant, and whoever's going to be moving in, that just be prepared that this price that we're renting for reflects the fact that the amenities might not be ready, and so on and so forth.
Excuse me?
Yes.
So will the builder who's charging you the occupants, the owner of the occupancies, will they take that into consideration? So no. So their rent every month will be what it is.
Yes. So in most cases, the occupancy, the maintenance that you pay was an estimated maintenance fee at the time of sale. Once you close on the property, that maintenance fee in most, and I'm sure you've all seen it, in most cases it will increase to reflect basically the reserve fund. Oh, the condominium corporation is on board and they've reviewed the budget, and they, we're short on this and whatever, and they estimated the running of the building 4 years ago, but these fees and values have increased since. So that maintenance fee will go up. So they're going to tell you, well, this is an estimated maintenance fee, and it's the low maintenance fee that they're paying. So they will not necessarily take into consideration, but you're not paying really high maintenance fees at the very first year you move in anyways, right? Yes, I.
Do you have to take occupancy in the internal occupancy, or you can wait till the closing?
You'll have to. If they tell you occupancy is on January 21st and you take it January 22nd, there's a fee that you will have to, there will be fines. If you postpone that occupancy period, if your client chooses to postpone without any legitimate reasons, there will be very high fines that your client will have to pay. When the builder takes you, you need to take occupancy, unless for whatever reason, you know, it's God forbid, a death in the family, something very drastic that your lawyer will ask for an extension or delay of occupancy. Otherwise, they will have to take occupancy regardless. The reason why the builder will have to give occupancy before final closing, and don't quote me on this, but this is basically the general rule of thumb out there, is that the building has to be 80 to 90% occupied before they can actually go to the city to register the building. And so people will have to take occupancy, and the builder wants to basically recover some of their expenses during the occupancy period. So you can't reject occupancy.
So you're not paying the property taxes until closing?
No, property taxes will not be assessed. Usually property taxes get assessed roughly about a year or so after your client has closed. And then they will basically prorate it. So your client in a year and a half after they've closed on the property will get a large property tax. So make sure they budget for it, because that property tax bill that they receive a year and a half, 2 years down the road will basically include all the past charges from the day they close on the property. Hi.
Sorry, I just want to be clear. What is the benefit to registering the building to the builder?
The sooner the builder registers the building, the sooner the final closings will begin, right? And usually the way the builder will do this is in the order in which their buyers took occupancy, they will respect that same sort of order when it comes to final closing. So if I'm on the second floor and I took occupancy at the beginning of the occupancy period, then I will be amongst the first to close as well. Okay, and these closings will happen relatively fast. They will, occupancies will be like 7 or 8 or 10 units, sometimes 20 units per day. And then the closings will also happen relatively quickly as well, just because the closing will really involve your lawyer passing the money, the funds from the bank and that they receive for the mortgage to the developer, and making sure the money is there and registering the deed of the property to your client. Usually there's no key exchange at this point because that's already been done at occupancy. So it happens relatively quickly.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand how much they have to pay during the occupancy.
So the amounts will be outlined roughly on the agreement of purchase and sale, and I'll talk about the disclosure booklet as well. So they will be outlined there, but it's roughly the equivalent of their mortgage amount plus the maintenance fee. So they call it a phantom mortgage. So it's going to be roughly around the same.
Where does this payment go? To the builder? Or
to the builder. It goes to the builder, and they give post-dated checks for that amount, including a maintenance fee at the time of occupancy. So when your client goes into the lawyer's office to do the paperwork for occupancy, they will collect those 12 post-dated checks from them. Yes.
It's only the interest component of the mortgage payments?
Yes, roughly speaking. But there's a maintenance as well, and there's I think an allocation for insurance as well. And so that's why it works out to roughly about. Yes.
On the agreement of purchase and sale, are there specific clauses we should put to protect ourselves as realtors?
So you cannot actually draw the contract. The contract is drawn, and I think we will get into that as well. The contract is drawn by the developer. So when your client is signing, they will hand over an agreement that is about 50 pages long, like I mentioned. And on it, it will have the name of your buyer, it will have the schedule of deposits and the dates and the amounts, as well as a bunch of schedules that will include all the everything that involves HSTs, everything that involves the rules and regulations about occupancy period, everything about the building in the agreement. They also give, once the agreement is signed, it also includes a floor plan of the unit, and your client will basically have to, in most cases, sign an initial bottom of every single page. Nowadays, the builders are doing it electronically, which makes it so much easier for buyers unless their laptop fails and then they have to print it out and then, you know, all hell breaks loose. But so your client is signing usually 1 or 2 copies original. So they'll be sitting there. So if you're going into a sales office and your client's buying, you want to allocate a good half hour, 45 minutes to an hour with that buyer, just because if they have any questions, this process could be a lengthy process. They're going through page by page, initialing, signing. The sales representative of the builder will explain. You don't have to do a lot of talking. You just want to basically be there, hold your client's hand and reassure them, don't worry, I know you're signing 52 pages, but we will have 10 days for you to think about this. We will have 10 days for the lawyer to review this and make sure everything is satisfactory. So the agreement of purchase and sale of these developers will have all sorts of clauses to protect the developer. There are very few protections for our buyers. Tarion is the only basically schedule that will have any kind of protection for the buyer, and even that is somewhat limited. But your lawyer will look for certain clauses and would ask for them once they review the paperwork, and I'll go into that in a little bit.
I have a question. Are we also covering in case it doesn't close?
Yeah.
What happens?
Yeah, so the
that's
agreement
exactly-
will have, the
yeah.
agreement will cover that grounds as well. In the event of basically the most recent development where Cosmo didn't deliver the product and canceled the project, the agreement of purchase and sale would have indicated that in the event the builder does not deliver this property, the buyer is entitled to receive all their deposits back. And there will also be a clause in the co-op agreement that will talk about in the event the builder does not deliver this property, your commissions, whatever amount was paid out, will be requested back. Some developers, back in the days with Expo and Cosmo, it's called a clawback clause. There was no clawback clause. So that agreement, so the co-op agreement did not say, if we do not deliver this building, you have to pay whatever commissions we've paid out back to us. But nowadays, all the developers are putting that clause in there. In the event the project cancels, any monies that were paid to you as an agent will be, you're requested to pay that back. And so the brokerage is also responsible to receive that money back from you. And so nowadays they're introducing an indemnification letter, which basically by signing that, you're guaranteeing that whatever monies you had collected, you will pay back to the brokerage, because the brokerage is responsible to pay that back to the developer.
I was gonna say, in the normal case of these constructions, when do the agent get paid? Is it right when?
I will talk about.
Or is it on closing?
I will talk about that in a second.
Because-
Yes. Yeah, it's spread out usually.
How do we ensure that we're actually gonna be the realtor that's representing the client? Like, where do we, is that the confirmation of cooperation that we signed with the builder?
No,
Or how do
so
we ensure that?
basically number one is when you introduce a buyer to a project, in most cases I'm hoping you would have signed a buyer agency agreement with them, because you could do that with a pre-construction as well. So get a buyer agency agreement with your buyer. Educate your buyer that in the event they do go to the sales office without you, that they do tell the sales office staff that they have an agent, to make sure they have plenty of your business cards with them. The developers all want you to accompany the buyer to the sales office the very first visit they go. But a lot of our buyers go to the builder's website and register there. So that registration does not necessarily mean that they're not your buyer. They're just registering to receive. So the builder will not go by the registration. If your buyer tells you, oh, don't worry, I've already registered on the builder's site, don't worry about it. It's that first visit that you have to make sure you accompany your buyer, and make sure when they go into the sales office, in most cases, the sales staff, if they're good, they will greet you and they will say, oh, have you been here before? Okay, let's register you. And you're going to say, okay, I'm so-and-so of Royal LePage, and here's my business card, and this is my client, and you want to register your client with the builder and get them to put down their name and phone number and make sure that the site staff recognize you as their agent. And that's your point of introduction to the developer. Let me finish this point and then you want to also accompany them every visit as much as possible until that agreement of purchase and sale has been signed and that you get your co-op agreement. From that point onwards, your buyer might want to visit the site on a daily basis. You don't have to be there. Once you've signed the agreement and you've signed your co-op and you have your copy of co-op, I mean, they want to bring on their aunt and uncle and, grandmother and grandfather, and every weekend it's their outing and they want to look at the finishes. That's fine, and J&D would let them go by themselves. You don't have to be there, but just make sure, so long as they haven't signed that agreement, you're accompanying them.
You
sorry.
said-
Go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt. You said earlier about them not providing the signed co-op agreement until after the cooling off period.
Yes.
So that's the way we do it. Our clients signed it, we all signed it, and we just kind of cross our fingers.
No, if your client if you introduce them to the project and your client signed the agreement, you're guaranteed. I mean, it's very rare. I've never seen a developer want to screw an agent out of a deal, because these developers depend on us, the realtors, to bring them the deals. They want to have a good reputation with our agents, and so they wouldn't screw you out of a deal. I wouldn't worry about it.
My question is, if they even can signed up online, registered themselves to get
Yeah.
whatever, does that count, or do we still have to do the?
You still want to register them on site.
So the builder is not going to say, oh, they already registered online and we can't do it again.
Their systems, it's hard for them to cross-reference it. I mean,
Oh, okay.
I wouldn't worry about it. Just register them in person. Yes.
So kind of just going off of what she said, so if they're going out on their own that day and they decide to go in and register and you're not there with them, does that?
So you want to
become the
educate them.
builder?
If you are going to a site that you think is going to be attractive to you and that you're in, I mean, because people drive around on weekends and go to these different sites, make sure you have that buyer agency if you know your client's going to go off. And but keep in mind, the developer doesn't care if you have a buyer agency or not. That's between you and your buyer. But if they're going into a site, make sure they actually announce that I have an agent. I was driving around and I decided to come in. My agent isn't here, but I do have an agent. And here's her business card, or this is her name, this is her phone number, this is the company she's with.
If they don't share that for whatever reason, they say.
Then
at that
you're
time,
in
no,
trouble.
Then, yeah.
Yeah, you're in trouble. Then you have to sort of fight nail and tooth to try and get it. Make sure if you're not there first introduction, make sure you're there when they're signing. Okay, that doesn't necessarily make you communicate. If you find out your client has gone into a sales office and that they've already spoken to the site's agent and whatnot, they did tell them that I do have an agent, hopefully, and your client wants to go back this weekend and sign for whichever unit, then you make sure you communicate with the site staff prior to that. I understand my client wasn't there either. I would go there in person and meet them and basically build a relationship. Hi, thank you for helping my client. Yeah, she was grocery shopping. I understand she stopped in. She really likes what she saw. Can you tell me about the project? Learn the project. Understand what your client is buying, whether they're actually making the right decision or not. And if they actually do go through with the sale, then, you've already made that introduction. You're guaranteeing, almost guaranteeing, I understand I wasn't there, but, is it still okay? I didn't know they were coming. Otherwise, I would have been here. Make sure you have that verbal confirmation with the site staff, and then show up on the day they're signing and make sure your name is on the agreement. They will indicate in the, we're kind of jumping ahead a little bit, but when there's a worksheet that gets filled out when your client wants to buy a unit, and I'll talk about what a worksheet is, but on that worksheet, they usually either handwrite or attach a business card of the agent that represents this buyer. So make sure that your name is on there. Sorry, you have?
Well, I was gonna ask is, this might be jumping ahead as well. What if we want to purchase? Do we get?
So you talk to, if you go into the sales office and you want to buy for yourself, then you talk to the sales staff and let them know, I'm buying this for myself. Does the developer basically exercise putting the commission toward the purchase price? Some sites do, some sites do not. That's something you can iron out during your 10-day cooling off period. Some developers will say, yes, no problem. We will put your commission towards the deposit. They will want a letter from your brokerage, and they have a template of what this letter will look like, saying that, so-and-so is waiving their commission and that the brokerage is okay with it. Or some developers will say, no, I'm sorry, you're going to have to collect your commissions, and it's separate, basically, whatever the case is. So going back to closings, so your client has done their interim occupancy, and there's usually delays. Just keep in mind, the interim occupancy could be, like I said, in some cases, it could be the same date as the closing. If it's a smaller building or if they're higher floors, the building might have been registered already by the time your client is taking occupancy of the unit. Penthouse, usually penthouse, not always, sometimes. Closing and occupancy is the same date, but let's say they've gone through their occupancy period and the closing rolls around. So final closing is when the actual closing costs have to be paid, and that's when I was referring to that development and levies that were capped. So you want to cap as many, you want the lawyer to cap as many of the closing costs as possible. That basically ensures that their closing costs will not go through the roof. These closing costs will include, you want to make sure your client budgets anywhere between 2 to 3% of the purchase price for closing. And this is money that they have to pay out of pocket. This does not come from their mortgage. These closing costs could include development and levies, like I mentioned. There's educational levies and charges that the city passes on to the buyer, to the builder. Builder will pass on to your buyer. There's utility connection fees that the developer will pass on to your buyer. Land transfer tax obviously is something that your buyer will pay. Anything like their lawyer's admin fees and photocopying fees, stuff like that, they will pass on to your buyer as much as possible. So that's why you want a lawyer that's well-versed in the world of pre-construction to try and reduce those costs for your buyers as much as possible. And lastly, assignment. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with assignments. And nowadays they're very, very popular. A lot of closings are coming up, and people, especially with the recent changes to the mortgage industry, people are unable to close on these pre-construction products that they have purchased 2-3 years down the road. Nowadays their closing is coming up and they can't afford it. The property is not being, basically, they're not, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm blank. So they're not being assessed. So the bank is doing their basically comparable, and the bank is not assessing these properties at the price that they were purchased 2-3 years ago. And that's a big issue. And so buyers are assigning, and they're paying, out of pocket to try and get out of this deal. But in a normal situation, your buyer bought 4 years ago, their circumstances changed for whatever reason. They're moving out of the country, they're moving out of the city, they're getting married, this one bedroom is too small, whatever the case is, they don't want to close on this property. They haven't, they might have taken occupancy, but they might not have taken, so it could be basically depending on when the builder allows them to assign the property, might be prior to occupancy, after occupancy, but they want to sell. And that, there's no unit to actually sell, and they're selling their agreement of purchase and sale, and that's called an assignment. So they're assigning their rights as the purchaser of this property to the new purchaser. Your client will still be on the hook until final closing. If for whatever reason the new buyer does not take occupancy, your client's still on the hook. If for whatever reason the new buyer does not close on the property, your client's still responsible, because as far as the builder is concerned, your client was the original buyer. So make sure that when you are doing assignments, and there is an assignment course that the Academy offers, a lawyer will come and talk to you about the details of an assignment and how to draft an assignment and whatnot. Make sure you get a lawyer involved from the very beginning stages of an assignment, and that you might even want to consult a lawyer prior to putting that property on MLS or wherever it is that you're advertising it, to make sure you know what you're doing and what kind of deposits you want to ask for, and what kind of, when you want your buyer to receive those deposits, what percentage goes to the trust funds. Because in an ideal situation, your buyer has paid 15% towards the purchase price. There's another 5% due on occupancy, for example, and you want to figure out that 15% that's already been paid, the new buyer has to now pay that. But do they pay that directly to your buyer and your buyer walks away with 15%, or do you want to leave that in a trust account? Obviously, if we're representing the original buyer, we want our client to receive the money as soon as possible, with a certain amount being, they might do it in a couple of payments, or do you want to leave it in a trust account until final closing has been done, and that's when you're gonna basically allocate the monies. And your commission will have to come, so you're gonna basically, in a perfect world and in a perfect assignment situation, you wanna collect your buyer's deposits as well as the amount the property has appreciated. So let's assume that, you know, this property has grown in value and that your buyer stands to make $20,000, $30,000, $50,000 on top of their purchase price. So that amount, does that get paid out right away? Does that sit in the trust account? And our commissions will come from that extra amount that is collected. So those things have to be ironed out, yes.
Do all builders allow assignments?
So it will all depend.
Or some of them they charge, I heard some of them even charge you for.
Absolutely. So at the time of signing of the agreement, the builder might offer that free assignment as an incentive, or they might say, okay, assignment is however much, $2,500, $5,000, $10,000. So just keep in mind, if there's no mention of this assignment at the time of signing, your lawyer, when they're reviewing the paperwork, they will look for an assignment clause, and they can tell you whether there's an assignment clause in the agreement and whether assignment is allowed. Of course, there's going to be rules and regulations and certain circumstances that will surround that assignment. But let's say the builder says it's free assignment. That assignment is never free. Even with a free assignment, that just means the builder's waiving their $5,000 assignment fee. There's going to be admin fees involved still, a few $100s to about $1,000 that their lawyer is charging the builder. So the builder will still charge your client that amount. So it's never 100% free of charge. There's still some admin fees involved. If there's a fee, then you know you're at the time of reviewing of the paperwork, your lawyer can reflect that to your buyer and let your buyer know that yes, assignment is allowed and it's going to be this many dollars. And but assignment will always have, at the time your client wants to exercise assignment, they have to get permission from the developer. And so you either ideally, I'd like to get my lawyer to reach out to the developer's lawyer in writing and get permission to assign the property. My client's interested in selling. Can we assign the property now? And they will say yay or nay, or in 6 months or in 2 months or whatever the case might be. Yes.
And the builder should approve the person who is assigning.
So yes, the builder wants to be basically involved every step of the way. In some cases, in most cases, they will request mortgage pre-approval and, you know,
The same process as the first.
Yes, yes. Okay, so assignment fee, we've done that. Okay, so why pre-construction? Why is pre-construction so attractive to a lot of people? Number one, they get to pay the deposit monies in increments. So they pay at the time of signing, they pay $5,000, $10,000, whatever the case might be. Then 30 days down the road, they pay 5% towards the purchase price. Then another 90 days, they pay another 5%. Then in 365 days, they might pay another 5%, and so on and so forth. And then 5% on occupancy. So it's spread out over a period of time, usually about a year or so. 6 months to a year is where majority of the money will have to be paid. And most developers, once about 10% of the deposit has been received, they will usually pay out a portion of the commission to the agent. So let's say the total commission is 4%. A lot of developers, in order to look after these the agents that are bringing them the deals, they want to keep you happy. They will give you 2% once 10% of the deposit has cleared. And then another, 1% once roof to completion is completed, and then another 1% after final closing. So even your basically co-op agreement will have a schedule of payments, and it will say how it's going to be paid out. So that deposit is fantastic. The value in most cases, the value of the property will go up from the time they purchase it to the time they're closing. There's already a lot of basically value in that property. That value has grown, and there's equity built in there automatically. The client gets a choice of layouts and finishes and whatnot, so they can choose, oh, I want a 2-bedroom that has bedrooms next to each other. No, I want a 2-bedroom that has separate, basically, bedrooms on the 2 ends of the unit. I can also choose the color of my floors. I could choose the color of my cabinetry and so on and so forth. So I could basically do it according to my taste. So that's also attractive to a lot of buyers. And that there's that carry-on warranty where my buyer or myself as a buyer, I'm somewhat protected if there's any major deficiencies up to about 7 years, you know, certain aspects of the property are still protected and under warranty. Okay, so that's our first section of pre-construction. Any questions thus far? Okay, I'm gonna have to speed that up a little bit. So now let's talk about, sorry.
Another question, what do you mean by choice of layout? So I thought they have only the floor.
Yeah, so the floor plans are there, but there might be 3 different one-bedroom floor plans. So they can choose what type of layout they're interested in. Okay, so the stages in which a property is released. So the way that a launch happens basically, a developer has a project, they, in most cases, let's scroll down to, this is where we are now. So the developer has a property in a lot of townhouse sites, not all of them, the developer launches after they've received their permits, but in most cases, majority of the cases, the developers will start selling a project before the permits and the zoning has been done. So just keep that in mind. That's one of the reasons why the project, oh, thank you. That's one of the reasons why projects can't get canceled, because the developer wanted to do a 30-story building and they only get approval for 10-story building from the city, and so the whole project will basically fall apart, and that could be a reason why they cancel the project. So the developer, let's just say everything is fantastic and they have their marketing material ready to go. And so what they do is the very first stage of a launch of a project is when the developer opens its doors and shares information about the project with their friends and family. Now, this friends and family is literally the friends and family of the builder and any employees thereof, but it could also include any past buyers. So Pemberton, for example, in one of their launches, they included in the friends and family launch all the buyers of the Tower 1 were able to come in, and that basically pissed off a lot of the realtors, because realtors brought these buyers into the first building, and now these buyers can go and buy a unit with by circling the realtor, and the realtor at friends and family does not get commission anymore. So that pissed off a lot of people. So they usually try to be a little bit conscious of the fact that these buyers were introduced by these agents, but they don't always, because if the developer doesn't have to pay commission, they rather not and keep that money. But friends and family. So if you know any developers that are launching a project, you might get invited to a friends and family, and it's a fantastic opportunity for you to attend this friends and family launch and learn the project and find out about the project. But keep in mind, if you do happen to sell during a friends and family launch, you will not earn commission, just because the incentive package they've designed for friends and family does not necessarily have a commission worked out into it. Because they're giving a cash back on closing and, you know, this and that and whatever. So that commission has nowhere to, yes.
So would that be the best time for us to purchase?
Yes, ideally, that's a great time for you to purchase for yourself if you want to buy. But, you know, sometimes that same incentive minus the cash back is passed on to the broker launch, and you're also earning a 3-4% commission. So that might also be a good opportunity. So you just got to weigh the 2 different opportunities. Then the next round that the project is going to be introduced is to the realtors, and this is the platinum launch that we all hear about. Now, some builders call it platinum launch, some builders call it elite launch, some builders call it the golden circle, but it's basically the first opportunity that they open their doors to agents and they cooperate with realtors and pay commission on the deals. Usually prices are introductory prices. They're in most cases the same prices as friends and family. The incentive package might change. Very rarely would they have changed, but it's possible. And the elite, how to make the elite basically the platinum round is if you have previously sold for this developer and you've performed well and you were high performing, and so they will invite you to their next round And I will talk about how you can get into that platinum, basically standing with the developers. Then the next round, after about a 2-week period to about a month, depending on how well the platinum round is performing, they will then release and open the doors to the rest of the realtor population. And they, in order not to piss anyone off, they call it a VIP launch. But that's basically, in most cases, means the rest of the realtor population. In this situation, the prices might have increased a little bit compared to the platinum round. The incentive packages might have changed, and the availability will be less, basically. Some developers will release in blocks and will save certain blocks for the different launches. A lot of developers, they don't want to basically risk it. They will open the entire building up at the very beginning. And so at Platinum, everyone has access to everything. And if they sell 50%, 60%, 80% of the building during Platinum launch, then those units are no longer available to the rest of the realtor population. And after they've exhausted their realtor launches, that's when they will finally open their doors to the general public, the registrants. So if your buyer has gone on the builder's website the first day the billboard went up and they registered thinking, oh my God, I'm the first one to register and I'm going to have first access, that's not the case. They're going to be literally the last people who will have access, just because a lot of these sites are broker protected. And so they will make this opportunity available to the realtors, not necessarily the general public.
So the email that you sent out yesterday about coming soon, what stage is that? That's no stage yet. That hasn't
No
even
stage.
started friends and family yet.
I don't necessarily always get wind of friends and family,
Okay.
but it hasn't been launched. As far as Platinum, it hasn't happened yet. Some builders don't even do a friends and family. They might just directly go into Platinum. Or I've actually seen recently they did the friends and family after their Platinum launch, just because they wanted to really look after their elite realtors and whatnot. So then the stage of the launch, so what will happen, as far as we're concerned as Royal LePage, Your Community and Connect, what will happen is when I first get wind of a project and I know I have access to it, I will send that e-blast that said coming soon that will include the renderings and the logos. And that's the perfect opportunity for you to use that information, put it on your social media, start advertising it, do flyers if you want to invest a little bit of money, do flyers, or add it on your website, get a landing page. A landing page is a page that's dedicated to that project, but links up to your own website, where buyers, if I were to Google Universal City, for example, condos, you can pay Google search engines to basically rank your page, to rank at the top pages or on the first pages of the search. And so buyers will assume that that's the page of the developer. They will click on that page. They will look for information. Oh, okay. And your page will say, for information on floor plans and pricing, please click here. Once they click there, they will magically go to your registration page, where they have to now add their first name, their last name, their phone number, email address in order to receive information. And so that's how you build your database of people who are interested in a project. And that's what a landing page is. And I'm sure you've all seen it. Once you Google any project, you're going to see 50,000 pages of other realtors, but not the builder's page. If you're ever looking for a builder's page on a project, search it by the developer's name. So search for the developer's website, find Pemberton whatever.com, find the developer's site, and from the developer, you usually are able to then click on the page that will be dedicated, and it's a builder's page for that project, so that you're not accidentally going to some other realtor's page and requesting information. Okay, so then when I send out that logo and renderings, that's your first opportunity and the first introduction into a project. A little time will pass and the launch will potentially happen. In some cases, I am able to bring, all of you along to a launch if they allow us to bring our team members, and I can bring everybody out, and I will send out an e-blast saying, if you're interested to attend this launch, please RSVP. In most cases, they will keep it very limited and there's a person at the door standing checking name. If your name's not on the list, they're not letting you in. So then I will go representing the company. I will go collect this information, the price list, the floor plans, whatever they give us. In most cases nowadays, they don't actually hand anything out, or they might give you one brochure only, just because these brochures will cost them a lot of money. But they have a broker portal where if I click on it, it will have everything electronically available to me. Then I will download that to our website, and I will send another e-blast saying price list now available. Here's the worksheet information, instructions and whatnot, and then you can follow that. What is a worksheet? Do we all know what a worksheet is? A worksheet is basically a page that's provided by the developer that has a slot to fill in your buyer's information, their name, their phone number, and you want to complete that worksheet make sure that it's completed, fully filled out. You want to make sure it's legible. If I can't read it, I can't type it in. If I can't read it, and I'm passing it on to the other side, they can't read it either. If you can type it, then fantastic. If you can, make sure you print and make sure it's legible. Fill out the information accurately. You want the name you're filling out, not their nickname. You want their legal name as it should appear on the agreement of purchase and sale. So get their ID. Because you have to include a copy of their ID anyways. Get them to send you a picture of their ID. Use the ID to fill out the information on the worksheet. Or if you're sending it to the buyer to fill out, make sure they're filling it out using their legal name. You want the middle name as it appears on their ID. You want the date of birth filled out. Ideally, you want the social insurance number filled out. And the reason the developers ask for the SIN number is because if there is any interest that is incurred on their deposit, and in most cases it's a very minimal amount. I mean, I've seen $50 or $100. If there's any interest, then they have to issue a T5 for your buyer. So if you have two buyers, one social insurance number will suffice, but provide that social insurance number. And if they say, oh, I don't want to provide it, then it's not the end of, it's not the end of the world, but the site usually asks for it. So then you want to fill out their date of birth and their email address. Make sure the email address is included. Tarion will only communicate with your buyers through email, and even a lot of the developers are sending updates about the project using your client's email address. So make sure that they check their spam box, make sure that communication from the developer or Tarion is not going into their spam. If their email changes, they have to inform the site immediately. If their mailing address changes, they have to inform the site in writing. They have to send an email to the site or the developer saying my email has changed or my address has changed, and so on and so forth, so that they receive communication. And the developer then in turn will inform their lawyer, and then their lawyer will inform Tarion. So if your client wants to know about any upcoming information, make sure their information with the site is accurate. Where was I going with this? Oh, the worksheet, yes. So you want their information, and then the builder will provide a slot where you can provide either top 3 or top 5 choices of floor plans. So we'll say option A, option B, option 1, option 2, option 3, and this is where your client can basically choose what floor plans they're hoping to get. Because the purpose of this worksheet at this stage, at the stage of launch, is for us to get allocations, for us to get units for your buyer. And if your buyer only puts in there choice 1 floor plan A, choice 2 floor plan A, choice 3 floor plan A, because I only want floor plan A and I don't want any other floor plans, and I only want it on the 10th floor, I don't want it, the chances of your buyer getting a unit, getting floor plan A on that 10th floor are very, very slim. Make sure you provide a lot of options. Talk to your buyer, educate them. I mean, there will always be that buyer that will refuse to listen, and so they will learn the hard way that if I only stick to, this floor plan A on the 10th floor, chances are I will not get an allocation, I will not get a unit. It's already going to be tough. I mean, when I send in, with certain projects, Icona, for example, we sent in 100 worksheets, and we only got 5 allocations first time round. And then I kept begging, and I stood there days and from the morning until night asking for more units. Then they gave us another 5 units. Then they gave us another 5, another week passed by and I got another 5. So we already are unable to deliver to a lot of our buyers. And so that's when I will go and shop around from other agents and try and get units to fulfill our worksheets. But basically what you want to do is educate your buyers, make sure if you are looking for a 1-bedroom, sometimes you want to consider a 1+ den as well. And I've seen people that fill out, I want any 1-bedroom, any 1+ den, any floor. But in most cases, they will want you to indicate if they want higher floors, mid-building, lower floors. So just leave it in if there's a note section, clients will take any 1-bedroom unit. Just give the sales office options so that they will allocate. If they know your buyer's serious and you're giving a lot of options, then they will allocate to your worksheet. Yes, we have one.
What's your estimate on a floor premium?
Generally speaking, it's $1,000. If the building is very, very tall, sometimes there is a lump sum of an increased mid-building, and then it goes up $1,000 again. But you know, that's not always the case. Sorry, yes.
So the worksheet is not necessarily the unit or whatever that you really want. It's just like a submission, like something as a.
So there's two ways in which the developer will launch a project. This used to happen a lot more before, where they would give me a bunch of units. They would say you have unit 404 and 1008, or you have floor 10 and you can sell, these are the only units you can sell. Then I would broadcast that across our offices in the same format of the e-blast and saying worksheets are accepted on a first come first served basis. These are the units we have. Then you would have to submit your worksheet to me, and I would basically and the reason we do it via email is so that it's time stamped. And so I would allocate based on what I have to the worksheets that you were submitting to me. Nowadays, a lot of the developers are not giving us units ahead of time, just because a lot of in a lot of situations, I would have a bachelor unit or a 3-bedroom unit that nobody wanted. But I had a whole bunch of inquiries for a 1+ den, and I didn't have any. Do you know what I mean? So nowadays they allocate according to worksheets submitted.
Okay.
So we are submitting these worksheets and saying, this is the type of unit my client is looking for, and I will submit that, and they will timestamp it on their end as well, and they will allocate and get back to me and say, okay, for Mr. Joe Smith, who was looking for a 1+ den, I have unit 505, and it's on, you know, 5th floor, obviously, and this is the price and this is the view. You need to let me know as soon as possible. So what's going to happen is I'm going to call you and say, okay, you submitted. And so make sure when you're submitting your worksheet to me, you have your own information included on it as well. So I know whose buyer this is, and I have a way of reaching out to you. Put your name and your cell number, please, and email address on that worksheet. And when you're submitting it to me, then I will call you and say, okay, for Joe Smith that you submitted a worksheet to me, I have unit 505. I need to know ASAP, just because our window of opportunity is very small. They want to know, is your buyer serious? Are they going to sign for this? And I need to let them know as soon as possible and set up a signing date. They're going to say, okay, it's Friday afternoon. They're calling me with this allocation, and we are starting signing as of tomorrow. You need to get back to me as soon as possible. So then you need to talk to your client right away and say, this is what they've given us. Your client's going to say, oh, did they not have 6th floor? Can you see if you can get 6th floor for me? We can't negotiate at this point. You know, this is what they've given me. I can try. I mean, I will always try to get more. I will always try for something better. But it's always a good idea to take what they give you and then think on, sit on it, sleep on it during that 10-day cooling off period. There is a potential of units coming back. They might have allocated to another agent and that agent's buyer didn't take it. If you're at that sales office and building that relationship with the site agent after I've already gotten the allocation for you, because you will go in with your buyer for the signing that has been scheduled, then you can build a relationship with the site staff and say, you know what, they really wanted a 10th floor. If the 10th floor comes back, can you please, you know, and go in with a cup of coffee. You got to butter them up, you know, build that relationship and build a rapport with them. And you never know, that 10th floor might actually come back of that same layout, and they might call you and say, you know what, that 10th floor came back. If it is within the 10-day cooling off period and that deal hasn't firmed up, they might be willing to do a unit switch for you.
So basically, all information should be available for us when we click on pre-construction project. In terms of the payment, maintenance, and all the rules and regulations.
Everything I have access to will be on that link.
So some of them I checked, but I didn't find any information in terms of the maintenance and also.
We'll talk. You
payment.
tell me which ones you're looking for. If there's information missing and you've basically looked through the material that's provided and you can't find it, send me an email and I will reach out. You could, depending on what stage the building and the launch is, you could always reach out to the site as well directly. And I always encourage you, if you go to my website and you click on a property, if it's during basically, if they've done their platinum and it's no longer platinum and their sales office is open for business now, you are actually more than welcome to contact the sales office directly. If you want to send any of the information to your clients, make sure it's accurate information. I try to get updates with those price lists as often as possible, but they might have issued an updated price list yesterday and I don't necessarily have access to it. So before sending it to your buyer, you want to confirm with the site that that's accurate information still and that availability is still the same. So if the sales office is open, I encourage you to contact the sales office, confirm the information if you have any questions. But if that's not the case and it's during platinum launch, they don't answer phones, there's no phone number usually during platinum for you to contact, then reach out to me and I will basically help you get whatever information is missing.
How about the units available?
They will never give you a list of availability. They will, whatever you see on the price list, they have at least one of, okay? And that's the information you will get. They will never give you that, because first of all, they don't want it to be known. If they're telling everybody, oh, we're 50% sold, and they, as you know, in fact are not 50% sold, they would not want you to know. And you know, in most cases, if there's 300 units and they're still 40% available, that's a whole bunch of units. They're not going to give you a list of everything. But now that you've seen with the case of Aera, for example, they did their launch and they sold a whole bunch of units and all they have remaining is 20 units. So what they will send out is a hot list of availability, hot list of units. And when I share that with you, or if you go to our pre-construction page and you click on the price list folder, you will see hot list dated, hot list dated, hot list dated, and that basically is what's available on the date that it's indicated. Even that could change on a moment's notice, because if someone walks in at 12 o'clock when they open the sales office and buys something off that list, they're not going to update it again until the end of the day for the next day. So it's, you always have to check with them on availability. Okay. Okay, so like I said, I will tell you what they've allocated and we have to quickly then set up a signing appointment. When signing appointment happens, your clients will go in with their copy of the ID, with their checklist, with their checkbook rather, as well as you will accompany them to that signing appointment, bring your business card with you, and make sure that the units that you've allocated, I basically gave you as your allocation is the actual unit they're signing. Make sure their name and information, the site is going to confirm all the client's information with them. Look at the floor plan, make sure it is the actual floor plan that they were planning on buying. Sort of quickly study the floor plan. The site staff will walk your client through the signing procedure and they will sign, and they've tried to do this as quickly as possible. They will provide your clients a copy of the signed agreement, usually on the spot. They will either email it to your client or they will give them an actual printed copy along with the disclosure booklet. Disclosure booklet in the world of pre-construction is equivalent to your status certificate, right? And it includes everything about the building, all the projected budgeting and whatnot. What you want to do, what you want to keep in mind is the 10-day cooling off period will start from the day your client gets their signed agreement. Some sites will give you the signed agreement that same day that your client has signed the agreement. Some sites do not have a representative of the builder on site, and they will say, okay, we will call you once your agreement is ready to be picked up. And it could be a day or two after your client has signed. Those 2 days are not to be included in your cooling off period. Your 10-day cooling off period will start from the moment your client gets that copy of the signed agreement, whether it's electronically or physically a copy, and make sure you confirm that with a lot of the sites. A lot of the site staff are not familiar with this, and they will assume that, oh, your 10 days started the day your client signed, and that's not legally correct, okay?
So do you have to write it somewhere?
It's usually, what I usually go by is that there's a page in the agreement. in a lot of cases, it's a Schedule D, but it's the acknowledgement page. The acknowledgement page acknowledges that, and the date that they're supposed to date that acknowledgement page when your client is picking up their copy, confirming, your client signs it, acknowledging that I've received everything that's listed on this acknowledgement page. That date has to not be filled out if they're not going to get a co-op, they're not going to get their copy right on the spot. It should be filled out the day they receive their copy, and that is the date you
So
go
we
on.
should tell them that.
You need to be aware of it and make sure you protect your client accordingly. What page am I on? So signing appointment. Okay, and I talked about our pre-construction website. I talked about our e-blast. These are basically the sources that you can use. So your best sources to learn about the projects that are upcoming are through my e-blast and through my website. But I don't have access and information about everything that's happening in the GTA. There's so many projects. On a daily basis, there's hundreds that are getting released and launched and whatnot. I can't possibly know about everything. But sorry, go ahead.
Just curious, can you fill out more than one worksheet for your client and whoever answers first kind of thing? Is that okay to do?
What do you mean, through me?
Yeah.
Ideally, no. Just because you're basically taking that opportunity away from another realtor, another agent. And unless you're going through different sources, then, yes, you can. But again, I don't encourage it, because if I get an allocation for you and you get and another agent gets an allocation for you, then you sort of choosing between, you're doing your clients a huge favor, but it's kind of, abusing the system a little bit. So use your discretion. A lot of there's a lot of sources where you can, if your client says, oh, you know what, I saw such and such sign on the corner of this street and that street, and there's a project coming up. Can you give me some information on it? You can check our website, and in the event there's nothing on our website about this project, I really encourage you to go to buzzbuzzhome.com. On BuzzBuzzHome, you can actually search by map, and once you get on the page on basically the area that you're looking for, it's going to have little basically balloons about all the projects in that area. And so chances are you will be able to find, or just Google. I don't encourage Googling the project name off of Google search, just because, like I said, you're going to get a whole bunch of information from other builders. Try Googling the project name in BuzzBuzz Homes and or Condo Now to learn about the project. Then if we want access, then that's when you want to reach out to me and see if I can get us in. If it's during Platinum launch, then you want to reach out to me and see if I can get you access, if I can get you, directly in with a developer. If I'm able to do that, then fantastic. We earn our full commission. In the event I'm unable to do that, I will let you know that there is an option to put you in touch with an agent that does have access to this project. But in that event, you will have to know that that agent, based on their discretion, might hold back a percentage of the commission. As a general rule of thumb, most of the fair realtors out there do 1%. Some do a little bit less if you do multiple deals through them. Some do more. At Icona, there were agents that were earning 4% commission and were selling their allocations out to other realtors and were keeping 3.5% of the commission. And the agent that was desperate to get a unit for their buyer was only earning 0.5%. But because they were desperate enough and they wanted to look good and basically keep that buyer, they wanted to look good to the buyer and keep the buyer for themselves. And because, if your buyer can't get the unit through you, they will certainly go and exhaust other resources. So these are great websites to use to learn information and learn about the projects, upcoming projects. Communicate with me. Feel free to reach out. Email's always fantastic, just because my cell phone, I might be in and out of meetings if I can't answer you. Text messages are always good as well. Please don't message me at 11 p.m. Because, I will get a little pissed off, but I will answer you the next day. So if you do, then that's fine. So the next website that I've actually outlined for you is a great website, and every city actually has this section on their webpage. And what that site is, it's basically the City of Toronto's zoning and planning department's website. So any developer that is putting an application through for an upcoming project and is looking for zoning information and looking for zoning and permits, those files will be filed and available on that website. And the City of Vaughan has its own site. This is the City of Toronto's. The City of Vaughan has, I think Richmond Hill also has. And that's basically the very first basically in that you will have about any upcoming project. So once you click on that site and you find the area that you're looking for, it will tell you that such and such builder has filed an application to build a 20-story apartment building at the southeast corner of, Yonge and Finch area, for example. That plan might never actually pan out, but chances are that it will. At this stage, if it's still in the planning and application stage, there's still no marketing name for this building, so you might not be able to get information on it for a while to come, but at least there's something coming. And if you have a buyer, looking for something in that corner, down the road, and there will be something coming to that area. Condo Life magazine is a fantastic source as well. I honestly, personally, very rarely use Condo Life magazine, but it has a lot of different developments built into it, and they have information on a lot of developers. My first resource is BuzzBuzz Homes, and then Condo Now. You can actually, with Condo Now, you can become a member, and they will email you a lot of updates about any upcoming launches. But they encourage you to become an agent with them, and they will send you leads and stuff. I know some agents who've done that. I honestly don't know how lucrative it is to become a member with these sites. You're better off building your own database and your own websites and doing your own advertising as opposed to paying a site out there to send you leads. Facebook, Instagram, so those are all fantastic places where you can find information about projects, but that's a fantastic tool to use to advertise your own access to certain projects coming up. And we always basically dismiss the power of our friends, our circle of friends and family. They might not know that you have access to pre-construction projects. They know you're a realtor. That doesn't necessarily mean you do pre-construction. So anytime I send something out, why not post it on your Facebook, on your Instagram? It's free advertisement, and you never know who's going to see it and who's going to reach out to you for some information. Okay, the last point, and I know I've talked about this a lot, but it's truly a very powerful source that is often overlooked. When a project launches and the hype dies down, there's still going to be inventory left at this site. During the 10-day cooling off period, we might not be able to get units during platinum launches, but these units, not all are going to firm up. A lot of people will return these units just because they bought in the hype and they were excited, and then when they actually looked into it, oh, I can't afford it, oh no, the closing costs are too high. So there's going to be leftover inventory. So once a project is open to public now, it's a perfect opportunity, or open to agents even, it's a perfect opportunity for you to go into the sales office, find out the availability, and continue marketing that to your buyers. Yes, you missed the platinum launch, or you didn't get what you wanted at platinum launch. Chances are there's still a lot of units available. The price might have increased, but in most cases, they will increase by a few $1,000s. And in the large spectrum of the actual budgeting and whatnot, it will not make a huge difference. $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 of increase. I've seen more, but that's generally what you're looking at in terms of increases. But you're no longer fighting off the crowds to try and get in and get information. You're actually going to be greeted, and they're going to be civil, and they're going to be nice, and they want your business. So they're actually going to want to work with you, and that's a perfect opportunity to continue advertising the site. You want to bring your buyers into the site. They actually get a chance now to look at the model of the building and look at the finishes. Whereas at the platinum launch, they're buying blind. they don't get to see the building model. They don't get to see the finishes. In most cases, they don't even go into the sales office because they might launch a project and do the signing out of a hotel and not even their own sales offices. So your client is really buying from a piece of paper, a floor plan piece of paper, and they can only see the magazine and the brochures, and that's their, only source into this building or this townhouse project. So never dismiss the power of that leftover inventory at a sales office. At one of our sites, at the GoTo site, we were about 70-75% sold. And at this stage, we were open to the general public, and the traffic had really died down. We would get about 3, 4, 5 people a day, but it wasn't the crazy crowds that we had at the beginning. An agent that was very active in the Brampton area came into the sales office one day. Oh, what do you still have remaining? Do you still have inventory? We shared, of course, we're like, oh, hello, come on in, please, would you like a tea, a coffee, we want business. So, the site agents are very hungry for business. They're going to be very nice to you at this stage. So, yes, this is the building, this is, it's located here, it's 12 stories tall, it's this, that, these are our finishes, this is a sample of our kitchen. We gave him a walkthrough of the product, and he said, oh, well, you know what, I really like this product, and I think I could sell. In this building, I can do well. So I want to do an event. I want to do a weekend event. Do you guys allow events? Of course we allow events, please. So I asked them to send us an email about the dates that he's looking at holding this event. So he sent us an email saying, I want to hold an event on February 9th and 10th, Saturday and Sunday. And we forward that to the builder. So the builder actually hears about, oh, this person, Joe Smith wants to hold an event at one of our sites. This is the first time this builder's hearing of this builder, of this agent. They've never worked with this agent, but that's the first introduction. So the name is basically introduced to the builder. Builder, of course, will not refuse a free event. It will cost them nothing. So yes, absolutely, he can do an event. So this agent sent out a bunch of flyers. He did his social media e-blasts and whatnot. I don't think he actually spent a whole lot of money for that event that he did with us. All he did was some flyers, and on the flyers, he said, with every firm purchase, I will give you an iPad. It was a mini iPad or something. Some sort of an incentive package he was providing on top of what we were offering at the builder site. And he sent these flyers. So May 9th and 10th rolls around. The number of people that came into that sales office with his flyer saying, I'm here for my iPad. We even had previous buyers that had bought from us that had received his flyers are coming to me saying, oh, you guys are giving an iPad now? I didn't get my iPad. I bought at the Platinum Lodge. Oh, sorry, this is another agent who's doing it. It's not through us. So, you can kind of feel the power, the reach that he had in the community. This was the community that we thought we had exhausted and had already advertised to and whatnot. So he got a lot of traffic. Day one, he signed about 12 deals from these flyers and the social media e-blast that he had done. Day two, he signed another 8 or 9 deals, and there was residual traffic that came in the weeks following. And anyone who walked in saying, I received so-and-so's flyer, we automatically would get in touch with him, even if he wasn't on site. It was his client, and we're not going to screw him out of these. He spent money, and so he will get his deals. He had built a report. He came in with, I think a thing of coffee. Some of them buy lunch for the site staff. Some of them bring lunch for their own people coming in. Some of them will do coffee and cookies and whatnot. Some of them do nothing. Some of them just give that free iPad with a firm deal, and it will actually bring traffic. So in that weekend, he wrote 20 deals at 4% a deal, and every night we sent a report to the builder saying, Joe Smith sold this unit, this unit, this unit, this unit, and the next day Joe Smith sold this unit, this unit, this unit. And the reason he did that was because he wanted to become a platinum realtor with Pepperton Group. He was never a platinum prior to that event. So not only did he make a SHIT load of money that weekend, but he also became platinum, so then he gets invited to every launch moving forward with platinum. So never dismiss the power of a leftover inventory and power of an opened up sales office. If there's inventory, there's money to be made. This, I mean, I really don't have, I think you guys all know this. I don't really need to go into it. There is, however, something that I wanted to show you. So I do have, and I have talked about this previously. There is a tool available to you guys for your investment purchasers. It's an Excel form, and one of our realtors who's really good with Excel sheets, and he's also a mortgage broker, he's built this for me. And this is a PDF version of it, so it's not interactive, but that Excel form is actually interactive. And anything that's blue, you can input. Anything that's green is going to be automatically calculated. And so you're going to fill out certain amounts and expenses with regards to a property that your client is considering to purchase. And this will then do an analysis for you as to whether or not this is a good investment and the rate of return, the annual rate of return. He's actually done it for 5 years. Sometimes you don't even need to go that far. But if anyone's interested in getting access to this sheet, please leave me your business cards, or I will give you my business card. Send me an email, so I will email this form to you. At some point, we should probably do a course to teach you and walk you through how this is done. But if you spend about a little time with it and kind of study it, it's actually pretty self-explanatory and it's easy to figure out. It might seem daunting with all the numbers, but it's actually relatively easy to work with.
In case I missed something, in the cooling off period, what's the obligation to the buyer if they in fact do decide not to proceed?
So what they have to do is they have to communicate their intention not to go firm within the 10-day cooling off period. Ideally, I'd like to have my clients send an email, or I send an email, CC the buyer, and send it to the site saying my client has decided not to proceed with this deal. They will ask you for a reason, just because of their mark. They want to know where they went wrong and what stopped your buyer from going firm. They will ask you to bring the copy of the actual agreement of purchase and sale that your buyer signed, as well as the disclosure booklet that was provided to them, if they physically give you a copy. If it was emailed, then, in most cases, nothing needs to be done. And they will ask you to come into the sales office to drop that off and sign a mutual agreement. And that mutual agreement either will get executed on the spot, or it will be executed at a later date, and that's when they will give your checks back to the client. A lot of buyers, if they don't receive their checks right away, they will go to and put a stop on it just to make sure. But if you communicated the fact that you're canceling within the 10-day, then in most cases they won't process the check. Sometimes things fall through the cracks and they will accidentally process that check and deposit it. So if your client doesn't get that check physically back, then it's a good idea to put a stop on it just to make sure. Any other questions?
For the new agents, and there's a long process to this, and I was wondering, how do we learn more about it? Because it seems very fast-paced, and you don't want to make a mistake.
I will give out my business cards. Feel free to reach out to me. Let's set up an appointment. I will sit down with you. Everything that we talked about, I will go into more detailed, into depth with you. In depth, I will discuss. I won't go into depth, but I will discuss it in depth with you, and we'll talk about how you want to grow your business as opposed to something generic. So I'll have my business cards, and you can just reach out to me. Yes. Yeah, of course. Any other questions?